Welcome, friends. I'm Rayanna, and I'm so happy you're here. Today, we're painting something that feels like a fairy tale, this whimsical little toadstool mushroom house. This one is extra special. After creating my mushroom tutorials, I knew this little woodland cottage deserved more time to enjoy all the tiny details and beautiful elements that make it unique. If you've been here before, you know my tutorials are created especially for the reluctant artist, the person who says, I'm not creative, or I can't draw. My goal is to make art feel approachable and joyful, so you can sit down, pick up a brush, and create something beautiful even if you don't consider yourself an artist. This little tutorial is a little different. It's a longer, more in-depth painting experience designed for those who want to create a finished piece they can truly love without needing to draw everything themselves. I created the detailed mushroom house drawing for you, and you can download it from my website. I'll put the link in the description below. I'm also excited to offer a limited number of handmade watercolor experience bundles for this tutorial. Each bundle is carefully prepared with the materials you need to paint along and create your own finished piece. Because they are handmade, there will only be a small number available in my shop. We'll be keeping things simple. We won't be doing complicated color mixing, just using a beautiful selection of colors to bring this little mushroom cottage to life. Today we'll be using burnt sienna, Van Dyke's brown, vermilion, yellow ochre, lemon yellow, Payne's gray, ultramarine, hooker's green, and olive green. So grab your watercolor supplies, get comfortable, and let's create something beautiful together. Starting out, we're just going to wet our brush and make a simple wash with clear water. As you can see, I'm using the number 6 round brush. Usually I would use a wider wash brush to get the water on quickly, but I wanted to show that this can be done all with the same brush. So we are just outlining the mushroom, trying to get the background wet. Now don't forget, if you're starting out with dry watercolors, you need to wet your watercolors so they can be activated before you can start using them. So put some water on the watercolors, and then while we are getting water on this background, that will give it time to just be ready to use when we start painting. Now, as you can see, I have a 5x7 100% cotton watercolor paper. This particular paper actually comes with sparkles, so that's a little bit special, but you can use whatever paper you have. The outline I will have on my website, and you can trace that onto your own paper, and you can get the same results we're doing today as long as you use 100% cotton paper. I wanted to make it accessible for anyone who wanted to paint this, but if you do pick up the limited edition kit, it does have the image already on the paper for you, so it is a lot easier. One less step to do. I created these kits because I believe creativity should feel inviting, not intimidating. So when you're just starting out, choosing supplies can be confusing. So I wanted to make it easy. Each limited edition kit is hand assembled by me with everything you need to follow along. So you can spend less time worrying and more time discovering the joy of painting. Now it's time to get some lemon yellow on your brush, and we are going to start by painting the little lantern. So this is going to be the beginning of our light. Now I'm cleaning off my brush a little bit and coming with just clean water and just kind of going around the edges to kind of help coax the paint to come outward. We don't want it as intense as in the middle, so that this will help it draw the pigments towards the water. Now clean off your brush entirely, make sure there's no yellow pigment, and then we're going to pick up some of the ultramarine blue. We're going to start on the corners, and we'll just dab the blue in there and let it start to spread out and move the way it wants with the wet paper. This is one thing I love about watercolor. It just has a mind of its own, and it wants to move where it wants to go. So instead of fighting with it, you just work with it. So I'm just going to throw the blue in there. Don't worry about being neat. You're just getting it on the paper, and we're going to be working in layers, so it's going to change and morph as we continue to go. For the background, I'm looking for more of an atmospheric kind of settled feeling where the light has just left for the evening and you can still see a soft glow. So if you notice in the middle, there's still a light section. Try to keep the watercolor more towards the corners and don't go as closely to the middle. Keep that lighter. And of course, we're cleaning off our brush again. Make sure you get all of the blue removed. And we are going to pick up some Hooker's green, and we're going to do the same thing with the bottom corners. So first we'll start here, and I'm going to put the darker part towards the corner, and then I'm going to drag it out. Now the paper's still wet, so you should see it start to disperse. Sometimes the pigment likes to move faster than other times. It depends on how much water you really have on your brush, on what it wants to do. So I'm just going to fan this out here, and I'm not really worried about details right now. This is going to be the background color. It's going to set the stage for what we're going to do later. So starting with the darker green in the other corner, drag it up, and we're just trying to get that established grassy mix. And you see this green is very bright. It's very colorful. It doesn't look like a grass green, but trust me, it will make a beautiful effect, and you'll see when we add the other layers what this looks like, and it's gonna be beautiful, and it adds that extra glow. Now I'm trying to be extra careful around the little mushrooms because we don't want to get the green on the mushrooms because we have something different intended for that. But we are going to get the green as high up as we can. And don't worry about painting over the plant life because that's going to be part of that scene. But the mushrooms need to stay empty. I'm going to pick up some more green and add some more to the corner over here because I want it to have a little bit more dimension. And then we'll continue to bring it up the page and let it meet with the blue. Don't be afraid if it runs together. We have enough sky that it's going to be perfect. Now our yellow lantern should be dry by now, so we're going to clean off our brush, and with a damp brush we're just going to kind of like lightly touch the green to bring it close to the glow, but you don't want it to overlap. Now clean off your brush and then dab it on the paper towel, and we're going to do a lifting technique. So I'm just taking my damp brush and I'm wiping it across where there's the outline of a plant right there, and then I'm going to take the paper towel and I'm going to press it against the paper, and that's going to lift up a little bit of the color so that we have more space for the plant. I just noticed a gap around the mushroom, so I'm just going to fill that in with some green. Now we're going to move into the Payne's Gray. And we're going to use the Payne's Gray to make soft, misty silhouettes of the trees in the background. So just follow the outline where I have little trees, and you're just going to add the Payne's Gray to the already damp paper. Now, because the paper's wet, you're going to see it disperse and get kind of fuzzy around the edges. If it does it too much, don't worry, there's a way to kind of clean it up a little bit, but it's in the background, so we want it to look kind of soft and fuzzy. We'll put a tree right here. I know it looks a little weird, but trust me, it will be a perfect detail once you see all the layers together. If you notice some of the tree outlines I'm leaving blank, that's intentional because the trees in the foreground in front are going to be brown. We're going to use brown for those ones, but the ones that are far away have that shadow to them. That's why we're using the Payne's Gray. And then we will use the same Payne's Gray to mimic some leaves in the corners in the background. So I'm just going to do a stippling technique where you just kind of hit your brush to the paper. That just gives it a little bit of texture so that you can kind of imagine that those are leaves far away in the distance. Now I'm going to clean off my brush a little bit and dab it on my paper towel, and I'm just going to go along the edge with a semi-damp brush and just kind of make a little bit of more leaves, but it's going to be a thinner consistency of paint, so it'll just have that extra layer to it. And like I said earlier, we can clean up the soft fuzzies just by taking the damp brush and going along the side. So this one had a little extra, so I'm just going around and spreading it out so it's not as harsh of a line. Doing the same thing to the other side, just kind of giving it that extra layer with a very thin consistency. Now, to make it not have a hard line, I just take my damp brush and I'm gonna wipe it along the edge of the tree, and then I just clean it up with my paper towel and put it back. So I'll just go around cleaning up the edges just to make sure it's not a harsh line. I want it to kind of diffuse into the background. I want a little more shadow in the back, so we'll just put a thin line back here and it'll make it a little bit darker. Just gonna stipple a little more, add a little bit more texture. And then we're gonna get ready to put some more shadow areas closer to the mushroom. So now I'm gonna get a little bit more Payne's Gray on my brush and we're gonna focus around the mushroom. And yes, we're painting over the green. It's just gonna give it a little more shadow in the background. I want it to be a little bit darker, so I'm gonna get some more paint and put it on my brush, and we're gonna start off pretty thick. So this would be like a cream consistency, maybe even close to butter, but not quite. If you watch some of my earlier tutorials, we talk about the tea to butter method, and that's how we're able to make the watercolors darker or lighter. It just, you add more water to make it lighter and use less water for it to be darker. We can use our brush to lift pigment if it seems too dark, and dab with our paper towel. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Just being very careful not to paint on the mushroom itself. This is still the background. This is still just adding more layer. I want to put a little bit close to the mushroom, but I'm being very careful not to paint the light or the mushroom. It's going to be a thin line. Now I'll just kind of spread it out here and give it a soft transition. I'm very careful not to paint over that plant that we lightened earlier. We have something special for that later. I'm going to put some more bushes up in the background to make it look like it's a little bit further in the background, so I want it to be a little bit lighter. When we're done with this, take a break to let it dry. You can use a hair dryer to make it go faster, but once it's dry, then we'll start the next step. Okay, let's get some more lemon yellow and let's work on the glow coming from the window, on the side of the mushroom, and in the door. So just paint the circle yellow. Which I want to be like a faint glow, so I just lifted some of the yellow off of there. And we'll do the same thing to the heart. Now we'll clean up our brush and we'll pick up some yellow ochre. We want it to be a slightly watery consistency, so it's fairly light. So think of it as like a tea consistency. We're going to drag it down the mushroom. Now don't worry if this looks too orange. When it dries, it'll be a little bit more muted of a color, and it's only our base color. We're going to add more layers to it. Now we're going to do the same thing with the yellow ochre on the underside of the mushroom. So this is the first layer. We're just going to paint it on and fill in the underneath. Careful not to paint over the line because the top is going to be the red cap of our mushroom, and we want to keep that ready for later. Now I'm going to pick up some more yellow ochre and we're going to do the base layer for our stairs and our pathway. So I'm just going to put the yellow ochre down there. I know it looks orange and it's a little weird, but it's just going to set the stage for later. Now I'm going to clean off my brush and we're going to get some burnt sienna. We're going to use the burnt sienna in a kind of coffee consistency. It's a little bit darker than the tea, and we're going to start on the door. So we're going to just start painting around the door. It's a little bit darker than the yellow ochre on the mushroom. But again, this is a base layer. I know we see a door and we think, which color should this door be? And it could be anything. I'm going to make it a brown, but you'll see how this all works together, especially when it dries. So I'm also going to paint this around the frame of the door, and we'll do the frame of the window as well. It's a little bit lighter, but that's only because I have less paint on my brush. It'll work as the base layer, and you'll see it'll turn out just the way we want it. Now we're going to get some more of the burnt sienna, a little bit more paint than we had for the door, because we want it to be a little bit darker, and we're going to start lining the inside of the mushroom and giving it one more layer of a few more. So we're just going to put a shadow around here, and then we're going to just draw little lines. And we're sketching, kind of. I know I made this for people who don't like to draw, so they don't want to sketch, but you're just making little lines around the edge to kind of make a jagged look in. This is going to dry really light, and it's just going to look like a little bit of a shadow and some texture. It doesn't have to be exactly like mine. It could have subtle differences, so don't be afraid to just get the pigment on the mushroom, and it'll turn out great. Putting some lines here, just lightly touching it with the tip of my brush. I'll do that on the other side too. So lightly touch it with the tip of your brush, and you make little lines. You're not trying to trace the lines I have drawn. You're just putting it in between those lines. So don't worry about those. Just make sure they're kind of going in the same direction. Again, get some more burnt sienna, and we're gonna shade the mushroom stem. So just make little lines going down onto the stem, and we'll make extra lines kind of going down. They don't have to be even. In fact, you want them to kind of have a variable to them. So some short, some longer, and then we'll make lines going down the mushroom stem itself, and that'll just give some texture to this mushroom and make it look more realistic for a whimsical mushroom. Now we're going to blend a little bit in the front because I want it to have the hint of a shadow. And because we have a light source there, I'm going to lift a little bit just to kind of have that glow still be existing there. And then just fill in some more lines. Now we're going to take some Van Dyke's Brown, and we're going to put it along the back side and underneath the cap of the mushroom, and that'll help with the more shaded areas. And clean off your brush, and we're going to go along the back side and just kind of diffuse the line so it's soft going towards the mushroom. There's a little too much water on here, so I'm just going to pat it up a little bit with the paper towel. Then get some more Van Dyke's Brown, and we're going to go around the door frame. Feels better to go from the bottom up, so and just paint it around the way that feels right. So we're going to paint carefully around the heart. We're going to fill in the door and leave the window of the heart open, and also we're going to leave the door handle. And when that's done, we'll paint the actual frame around the door with the same color. Now with a little bit more paint on my brush, we'll go in and we'll do the door handle. I just wanted to be able to see where it was. But I'm going to make it darker. It's going to be a dark circle. And later we're going to go in with an even darker color over that. Now we'll lightly, like when we were sketching under the mushroom cap, with the tip of your paintbrush, you can line out around the edge of the door. And then we're going to mimic some wood grain by putting some lines on the door. It doesn't matter exactly where you put them, just try to keep them vertical. We're going to line out the frame of the window the same way. So start drawing around the circle of the frame, and then we'll do the crisscross in the middle as well. Now get some vermilion on your brush, and we are going to start painting the red cap of the mushroom. This part is going to be fun. We just have to make sure we go cleanly around the line. We're going to avoid the little circle splotches that I made in the mushroom, because those are going to remain a white color. And when we get more paint on our brush and keep going, we want it to look a little inconsistent. We want it to have texture. So it's okay if some spots of the mushroom are going to have a little bit of a lighter consistency with the paint, and some spots might have a little bit darker. We want to make the lighter part go more towards the front and then kind of vary it as we're going backwards. And that'll naturally happen as you're painting and you're just picking up more paint. That'll give it some cool effects and texture on the mushroom cap itself. I want to tell you an old story while I work on this cap. It's called Teremok, which means something like small tower, or even more loosely translated little hideaway. It comes from Russian and broader Slavic folk tradition passed down for generations before anyone wrote it down. The story goes like this. Deep in a forest, a little house grows up in a clearing, small, snug, empty. In some tellings, it's a hollowed log. In my favorite version, it's a mushroom. A big toadstool with a red cap, just like the one we're painting right now. A mouse comes along first. She looks the little house over, decides it suits her just fine, and moves in. Not long after, a frog comes hopping through the underbrush. He knocks, "Who lives in the little house?" "I do," says the mouse. "Come live with me." So the frog moves in too. Then a rabbit arrives and asks the same question and gets the same answer. Then a fox, then a wolf, each one knocking, each one asking who's home, each one welcomed in without hesitation. The little house gets fuller and fuller, everybody making a little more room, everybody squeezing a little closer. And then, one day, the ground starts to shake. A bear comes lumbering out of the trees. He's enormous, far too big to fit through the door. So he says he'll just sit on the roof instead. The others warn him, tell him he'll crush the whole place. But he sits down anyway. The little house comes down. All at once, the walls buckle, the roof caves in, and everyone comes tumbling out into the grass. Here's the part I love, though. Nobody's angry. Nobody blames the mouse for letting too many people in. They just dust themselves off, and they build again, together, all of them, and sturdier this time. I think about that a lot, actually. How a small, unlikely shelter held more than anyone expected it to, simply because everyone kept making room for one more. And how even when it falls apart, that's not the end of the story. It's just where the rebuilding starts. What gets me about this story is how many chances everyone had to be unkind and weren't. The mouse could have kept that little house to herself. The frog and the rabbit could have turned up their noses at the fox and the wolf. When the bear came asking, they could have met him with fists instead of an invitation. Every single time, somebody chose generosity over guarding what they had. I don't think that's really about mice and bears. I think it's about us, about the fact that we get to choose every day how we respond to the people in front of us. Not everyone gets a place under our roof, and that's all right. Some doors are meant to stay closed. But in the moments we do have a choice. We can choose kindness. We can choose to make room instead of making excuses. The house falls down either way eventually. Houses do. But how everybody treated each other while they were under that roof together, that's the part of the story that stays with you. Now that we're finishing up the cap of the mushroom, we are going to go down and do the same thing to the two little mushrooms at the bottom. So just get some more vermilion on your brush and start painting, but make sure you avoid the little white spots on the mushroom so that it can look just like the bigger toadstool, but a smaller variation. Okay, clean your brush off and get some yellow ochre, and we're going to go around the edges of the window and just put a little line, and then we're going to clean our brush off, and we are going to kind of help the paint go towards the center, but we want to keep the center light. So that's why I'm cleaning my brush off each time. I'm just letting it drag a little bit, but I don't want it to cover the whole window. We're going to do the same thing with the lantern and eventually the heart at the door. So in the lantern, we're going to put a few lines, and then we're just going to dab the edge of it. And it's going to make it look like it has this little glow for the lighting in there. I'm going to take a paper towel and dab it just so that it's a little bit lighter. We don't want it to be too dark. And the same thing around the heart, just a little tiny line on each side and the bottom. And then we're going to take our clean brush, dab the edges of it. Okay, clean your brush off and get some Van Dyke's brown, and we're going to start working under the mushroom cap. So we'll use a kind of thicker line. See how dark we want it to be? Now that's pulling up a little bit, so I'm going to take a paper towel and dab that. If you ever see the water on your page puddling, don't be afraid to take your paper towel and just pick it up. Now we're going to make lines all under the cap of the mushroom. Some of the lines following the lines I drew. If you want to make extra, that's fine. We just wanted to have a little bit of a shaded area and give it a little bit more dimension as we go around the underneath of the mushroom. I'm going to make a line down the back of the mushroom as well, just to give it a little bit more definition. Then take the tip of your brush and go around the outer edge of the window, and this will make it look like the window is set into the mushroom. Then I'm going to go up to the top of the mushroom and just go over the lines that I already did, just to make them a little bit deeper. Now we'll outline the back of the mushroom cap, and then we'll take a very thin line and put it down the front side of the mushroom just to give it a little bit more of a sharp definition. Now I think it'll look good to put more lines on the mushroom stem itself, just to give it a little bit more texture. As I said, the other lines we made, they would lighten as they dried. So now this is just giving it an extra layer of that. And I'm just randomly putting the lines on here. It's good to have a plan when you paint, but a lot of the times when I paint, I just intuitively go with whatever comes to mind at the time. Like for this painting itself, this is the first time I'm painting it. I drew a picture of a mushroom. I thought about the colors I want to use, and then I'm deciding as I go. You are watching it come to be as we're painting it. All right, let's clean off our brush and get some burnt sienna, and we're going to put some lines on the stairs, and then we're going to use our brush to spread that line and fill in the color of the stairs. It'll make a really cool effect, kind of like a shadow and lighter area. So now I'm cleaning off my brush, I'm dabbing it on the paper towel so it's not too much water, and then I will drag the paint down. And as you see, it's darker where I had the lines, but it kind of lightens up as you go away from it. Now we're going to get a thick amount of burnt sienna, and we're just going to reline up that door and just give it an extra shadow. But the burnt sienna will give it that glow to it, so it won't be too muted. Just make sure you're making the line thinner on the right side than it is on the left. And then we're going to line up the heart as well. Just do the very outside of the heart. Next, we'll continue down the path with some more burnt sienna. We're going to put a lot of burnt sienna on our brush, and we're going to start at the bottom of the step and paint down the pathway. Now we're going to go all the way down. Don't worry about the green at the end of the pathway. It's going to overlap that, and it's going to make a nice variation there. The only thing I want you to pay attention to are the circles. Those are rocks. We're going to paint them with some Payne's gray in a little bit. So just leave those empty and paint the path all the way down. Now clean your brush off, and we're going to get the olive green, and we're just going to go in and make some little bushes in here. I love the way olive green looks. It just has a really cool granulation to it. Granulation is when you can see the different particles separate in the paint, so it gives it a little bit more texture. And you'll see as we go on making these bushes that it will look really interesting, especially since we're stippling, which is just hitting the paper with our brush over and over again. If you are hearing high-pitched sounds in the background, don't worry, that's just my children having a lot of fun. When you're a mom with 5 children, you kind of have to figure out when to do things, and sometimes during playtime, when they're running around elated and screaming, you have to paint and record your video even though there's noise. So you see here I am painting a stem and a leaf. So I'm just dragging my paint up to the top, following the line I made for you, and I made lines for the leaves. The trick with leaves is you start pushing down and then you lift up as you get to the tip, and that's how you make it get thinner at the end. So it starts off thick at the bottom and then thinner as you go forward. For the smaller leaves, I use the tip of my brush. Just fill it in. When the leaves are bigger, it's a little bit easier. You can just push the brush down to make the leaves, but I don't want to mess it up, so I'm just drawing with the tip. I'm gonna put a little plant with stems down here and put little leaves here, like a little fern going across the side of the mushroom. This one needs to look like it's behind the mushroom, so I'm doing it more in the background in the darker area. Now I'm going to make little stems for berries for later. We'll clean off our brush and get some Van Dyke brown, and we are going to make our foreground trees. So we just trace the tree trunk all the way to the top. I like it when trees have natural lines and variation to it. These trees are pretty straightforward. We just follow the outline and go up, and then we'll put some branches out there. I like twisty trees. In my book, I made trees that were like gnarled and knotty and twisty. That was really fun. Okay, we'll just make some branches. So the trick with the branches is to make sure they are thinner on the ends. You don't want it to be thicker on the end of the branch than it is closer to the tree. You want it to be thicker close to the trunk and then thinner as it comes out. And as you see, I'm making the little ends have a fork to it, so there's room for leaves in a little bit. And then the trunk, I'm just making sure it's thick enough. Now I take a clean damp brush and I just drag the paint down a little bit and just give a hint that there's a tree back there. I'm going to clean my brush off again and get some more of the olive green. And we're going to start working on the plants to the left. So this one is really a cool plant because this has some flowers on it, some big leaves. And we're just going to go over, make them thick towards the center and thin towards the tip. Now, because there's a light source above it, I want the leaves to look lighter as we get towards the top. So the lower, I want it darker. When I get higher, I want it to be a little bit lighter. So I'll let the paint run out, and then we'll make a nice thin stem going up towards the top. And then we're going to make little lines that are going to kind of hoop down. Kind of reminds me of Lily of the Valley, but it's going to be a lot bigger and blue instead of white. And so we'll just loop them down. We're going to do a similar thing with the plant near the mushroom house. It's going to be a different style plant with more leaves, but we're going to start out darker on the bottom and then let the paint run out as we get to the top so it can be lighter. I just cleaned some of the paint off my brush, and I'm gonna lift some of the paint off the top because the leaves were darker than I wanted them to be. So we'll just remove some of it, and that will get that lighter look. If your leaves turned out lighter naturally, you don't have to do that step. And then we're gonna take some more olive green, and we're gonna add more bushes and more texture and layers. I like doing the stippling technique because it does add more texture. And I'm going to stay over to the side and not try to cover up that bottom corner because I like that color variation there. So we'll move up to the top and start putting the bushes up there and just stipple. Don't be afraid of getting too close to the plant because we want it to look like it's behind the plant. And since the leaves are so much darker than what we're working with, it's not going to upset it. So basically I'm just making it up as I go. We're just putting the olive green where it feels right and putting some bushes in randomly and seeing where the paint takes you. Then I'm gonna clean up my brush and get some ultramarine for the flowers. And for this, I'm going to put a line on the side furthest away from the light source. And then we're gonna use the same technique that we did like by the stairs. We're gonna get a clean brush and then just drag the color over so it'll be darker on one side and lighter on the other. I just dab the brush on the paper towel as needed. Don't worry about making the leaves or the flowers too detailed. These are just whimsical additions to this mushroom. The mushroom's really the center of the picture, so these can be a little bit more of an expression. Okay, I'm gonna clean up my brush and get more olive green, and we're just gonna keep going with these bushes. I think it's dried enough on the right so we can add another layer and it won't just disappear. Now clean your brush off really good and get some yellow ochre, and we're gonna do the same thing to the bottom mushrooms as we did to the big mushroom. I know it can feel all scattered all over the place going back and forth, but I like to work where it's a little bit drier, and so I have to pick my spots. So now we're gonna get some Payne's Gray, and we're gonna want it really dark, and we're gonna start working on the little lamp. It's a really fine area, so I'm just trying to use the tip of my brush and stay in the lines that I already drew. It can be a little bit more difficult when you're trying to fill a really small area, but this brush is perfect for it and it'll work out. You just have to be careful and make sure you don't have too much water on it. I always like the idea of lampstands. It's like a beacon in the night. One of my favorite images of the lampstand is from Narnia, where Lucy first ends up at the lamppost, and then that becomes kind of like a compass for her and her family as they're navigating Narnia. That's why I have a lantern in my Reluctant Artist Guild seal and little crest. Light is good imagery for, guidance. Now that's not too bad. I think I'll put a little bit of the paint gray on the doorknob too, just to kind of give it a metal effect. Then I'll dab off my brush and we'll take a little bit off the doorknob, and that'll give it a slight variation, just a hint. Now bouncing around again, we'll clean off our brush and get some burnt sienna, and we're going to make the shadows under the little mushroom caps. We're going to do it a little bit different than the big one. It doesn't need to be as detailed. We just want a hint of a shadow. Just going to clean my brush off and dab it, and then soften out the line in the middle of the mushroom, and that'll give it a nice gradation effect. We'll do the same thing to the little mushroom. Start off with a line, and then we'll drag the pigment over, and it'll get lighter to the other side. Now clean your brush off. Get a very light consistency of yellow ochre, and we're going to make the idea of a shadow on the side of each of the mushroom's little nodes. Just putting this little bit of color on the side will give it some dimension, like it's a bump on there, not just a color difference. We'll do the same thing to the little mushrooms, just a little dot on the side. Make sure you're keeping it all on the same side. So I'm doing them to the right, kind of where I had the shadows on my mushrooms. I'm noticing a little bit too much water on the smaller mushrooms, so I'm just going to start picking some of it up with my brush. Just enough so it's not puddling. Just pick it up and then dab it on the paper towel. Then we're going to clean our brush off and get paint gray again. I know it's like painting with a scatterbrain, but really there is a technique to it. I'm just going with areas that are dry and that aren't going to mix into each other. And that gives the other areas I just worked on time to dry as well. As you can see, I am just picking up some of the pigment off where we just painted the rocks, and that just kind of gives a little variation in shadows. Then you're going to want to clean off your brush again and get some olive green, and we're going to put in some more bushes on the left-hand side now. The green that's closest to the path kind of reminds me of the little mossy patches that we have next to our trees. So then also with the olive green, we're gonna do some more stippling and create the illusion of leaves. The trees are off in the distance, so we don't need to have a lot of definition in the leaves. We just need to make it look like they're there. And so we just dab with our brush over and over again. If you have too much water on your brush, just use your paper towel and dab your paintbrush really quick. I'm trying to go a little bit lighter with the leaves over here just to give the illusion of they're going back in the distance. I'm intentionally leaving gaps between some of these leaves. It's tempting to fill in every empty space, but those openings let the light peek through. Sometimes what we leave out is just as important as what you put in. Now with a little more water, I'm just going to let my brush dance around up here, and it'll make that illusion that there are some tree leaves in the distance, and the water makes it a softer look, and it'll just give it life. Now clean off your brush and get some burnt sienna in a tea-like consistency, kind of thin so that it's see-through, and we're gonna add a little bit of dimension to this mushroom. So by putting this on, you'll still see the red mushroom, but it'll hint at a little bit of shadow and depth. See, I'm going along the top here and around the bottom. We're gonna put some shadow near the back once this is done. And it just kind of gives that extra touch to the mushroom to just make it feel more alive. I'm just taking my clean brush and going along the edges to just soften the line. So it's not a harsh line going towards the mushroom, it's just kind of gently fades. Sometimes it's the small details like this that make all the difference. Okay, let's get ready to do the finishing touch. I want you to have a clean brush, get some vermilion on your brush and make it thick, like a butter consistency. We're going to put some berries on this little branch. So as you see, I just made little dots and put the berries on there, and the painting is complete. You did it! You created a full, complete painting of a mushroom toadstool woodland house in the forest, and it looks great. Now, if you picked up the kit, it came with a little cream and gold frame to put in it, and obviously wait till it's dry and then you can just slide it in. And this frame is so sweet. You can gift it to someone, you can put it up in your house, you can even use it as the mat in a wooden frame if you want to put it up on your wall. My 7-year-old daughter, she loves these frames. After I'm done completing a tutorial, she'll do one with me at our art table, and she'll put her masterpiece in one of these and open it up and put it on our coffee table in our sitting room, and it's just so sweet. I am so proud of you for completing this art tutorial. You pushed yourself to the limit. You took time and listened to my scattered instructions and created something beautiful. Thank you so much for painting with me today. If you enjoyed this tutorial, I'd love to see what you created. So be sure to share your painting and tag me. Until next time, keep creating, keep hoping, and keep finding beauty in the everyday.